Life happens. With ADT, you can feel safe with an ADT starter kit professionally installed for only $49. Call today and install an ADT starter kit that includes security panel, keypad, key fob, entry and motion sensors, and for a limited time, get a camera included and installed at no additional cost. That's a $449 value installed for just $49.
Requires 36-month monitoring contrast QSB and EasyPay activation. Early term fees may apply. Certain marks excluded. License available at ADT.com. Florida EF001121. Louisiana F1639.
This is the Best of Golic and Wingo podcast.
And good Monday morning, everybody. Welcome in to a new audio experience. Sort of. Golic and Wingo on ESPN Radio and ESPN2 and the ESPN app. We're glad you're here with us. Trey Wingo, Mike Golic Jr. Hi, fellas.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I think this was put best to me in starting a new show after 18 years of an old show was, as my wife said, she said, you have different classmates, you're just repeating a grade.
So it's something you're familiar with.
Well, I thought, yes. New classmates, yeah, that's a cool thing. Okay, yeah. I get that. But then the repeating the grade, I think, was a subtle shot at not just me, but all of us.
Oh, there's nothing subtle about it. That was subtle as a sledgehammer. Yeah. You can have new classmates going, you can transfer schools, you can do anything else. Staying back a grade is a decided shot at all of us.
That seemed to be the real emphasis of her point, that we were repeating a grade.
Yeah, probably. And we're going to do it for 4 hours.
Yes, we are.
It's going to be nice.
Which makes it even worse.
By the way, you guys kicked off your show with the Rough Riders anthem, which I don't think should go unnoticed by anyone involved in this one.
Good job out of you.
Straight from those horns to the Rough Riders anthem. Someone won a bunch of money in Vegas on that one if there was any sort of prop bet.
Well, there you go. See, we're learning already.
And we're making people money already. So listen, really,
it's a
everybody
win.
wins. And look, we want to be clear about something. This is a different thing. This is a new experience, and we get it. We understand. There was a great show that went on for many, many years.
Right.
18 of them, to be exact. Although I can never figure out. Sometimes it was 17, 18, 19. It seemed like the years
this was
massaged a little bit.
This would have been, if we went the rest of the way, it would have been the 18th year because we started in 2000 and it's 2017. So you count that first, the 2000, it'd be the 18th year.
Gotcha. So we get it. It's a little new. Yeah. It's a little different. And we understand we're sort of adjusting as well. So
yes, we are.
We want you to know that we're with you.
We are with you.
We're all on the same page here, and we're going to try and do what you guys did for a lot of years. By the way, we do have a Mike and Mike swear jar here.
Yeah, we do.
So anytime any one of us say that name instead of the name of this show, we're going to throw some money.
It's just because we need to transition to the new show.
Correct.
We have to leave back the old and go with the new. So it's ways to learn.
We're like a new pair of underpants. At first we're constrictive, and then we become a part of you.
And
really? And there you go.
Who had 602 in the pool?
Yeah, that's it. Huh?
First Wayne's World reference of the day. Dilly dilly.
Wait, what did you just say?
And a dilly dilly.
What did you say?
I said the first Wayne's World reference of the day. Dilly dilly.
Dilly dilly.
There you go.
By
Friend
the way,
of the crown.
By the way, kudos before we get off the top. Kudos to my son here. He did Arizona State, Utah State Saturday night.
Air Force, Utah State.
I'm sorry. What did I say?
Arizona State.
Arizona State's a different thing. They're not the coach anymore. Air Force and Utah State Saturday night, 10:15. So as I said, I didn't see it, but I said, hey, have a good game. Hope it all goes well. His only comment was, I'm looking forward to getting dilly dilly in the broadcast.
And did you?
Third quarter.
There you go.
Like clockwork. 5 whole people heard it.
Friend of the crown. Congratulations. So anyway, we're off and running. We hope you're enjoying this show with us and stick with us for a while. So you guys ready to get started?
Let's do it.
All right, let's head off the top.
It's time for Off the Top.
Whether you like it or not, it's just beginning.
With Golic and Wingo.
All right, here we go. We'll start in the NFL in the Sunday night game. Chris Boswell, how about this? A career-best 53-yard field goal as time expired Sunday night to give the Steelers that 31-28 win over the Packers.
This one was way closer than everybody thought it was going to be. And kudos, let's first give it to Brett Hundley. He looked a lot more comfortable out there. Took him a little bit, but it's tough to expect him to step right in and really fill the shoes of Aaron Rodgers. You're not going to fill them at all, but he's playing better. But that was surprising to me, as close as that game was for the Pittsburgh Steelers as we start to look forward in the top teams of the AFC, where we know New England is sitting atop there, of what Pittsburgh not really taking care of. They did it. They got the win, and that's all that matters in the NFL. But as you start to look forward, you say, wow, that offense, no Aaron Rodgers, they did give up 28 points.
They did, and that's the concerning, because right now we're just basically looking for the flaws in the teams we know are going to be there. We know Pittsburgh is going to be in the postseason picture, and as great as that defense has been, they lead the league or are second in the league in a ton of categories, a couple more sacks last night. But that secondary, we saw blown coverage on one of the first touchdowns. We saw a couple instances where they got mixed up again in an area that, especially against New England, has been an Achilles heel for them.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned New England, because I think that's the matchup everyone's looking to at this point in the AFC. Week 15, it'll be Pittsburgh hosting New England. They hosted them last year, but remember, Landry Jones started that game, not Ben Roethlisberger. So that will be the game to watch going down the stretch in the AFC. Ben threw for 351 yards, 4 touchdowns as he won his 8th consecutive primetime home game. He's now 20-3 in primetime home games, throwing for at least 4 scores in each of the last 4. We continue with
Off the Top.
Behind 3 touchdown passes from Carson Wentz, who leads the NFL in that category, the Eagles roll to their 9th straight win as they whip the Bears 31-3.
Yeah, they lost 3 fumbles in this game. Usually when you're losing, fumbles like that, losing the ball like that, things aren't going to go well. But, man, the Bears, they are. Listen, I give them Mitch Trubisky, they're saying there's a guy, you live with him. 140 yards of total offense. The offense is really struggling right now. I do like their defense, but you're going against one of the best offenses in the league. And at some point, even if you're a really good defense, which I think the Bears can be, you just get hamstrung by an offense that just can't do enough for you, and end up on the field too long.
You know that all too well, and have to kind of sympathize, because we've seen that happen with the Giants and the Broncos, two defenses we've seen be great at times over the last few years that, because of the imbalance, tend to struggle. But last night for the Eagles, I mean, they're electric sliding on the field.
That was fantastic.
Really well done.
I thought that was really well done.
And they did it more than once.
Yeah, they did.
They decided to do it more than once.
You have a lot of chances to practice celebrations, which are going to be important going forward. At 10-1 now, this has long stopped becoming a blip or a statistical anomaly or anything. This is a trend. This is a really good football team in an NFC that is full of them right now.
They're the most balanced team in the NFL, and that's including the New England Patriots.
Well, right now, they're the 7th team in the Super Bowl era to win 3 straight games by at least 28 points. The first to do that since the 2012 Seahawks. But more importantly, if you're an Eagles fan and you know your franchise's history, you're starting to think about reservations, because this is the 4th time in franchise history they've started a season 10-1. In each of the previous 3, they've either made it to the NFL championship game, which they won, or the Super Bowl twice, which they lost. So 10-1 is a really good marker for your team. If you're a Philadelphia Eagles fan, you got to be feeling pretty good about things. So we'll see what happens as they continue to go forward in what is going to be a very, very difficult and convoluted NFC. We continue with
Off the Top.
And that other team in the AFC we were alluding to, the Patriots, beat the Dolphins 35-17 to clinch their 17th consecutive winning season. That broke a tie with the 49ers from 83 to 98 at 16.
Dare I say old school?
And the Cowboys, by the way, from 70 to 85.
Dare I say old school with Brady and Gronk hooking up? Again, 5 catches, 82 yards, and 2 touchdowns for Gronk. Brady with 4 touchdown passes. Remember, this team started out 2-2, and those 2 losses were at home. Something we weren't accustomed to seeing for the Patriots. But the one thing we always say, you give Bill Belichick the benefit of the doubt, you give Tom Brady the benefit of the doubt, that they're going to figure it out. And I would say, 6 wins, 7 straight wins later, they're kind of figuring it out.
We all enjoyed getting our licks in when they were tied with the Jets and everyone was looking up at the Bills in that division, and we all thought we were real slick with all that criticism. No, it doesn't work. Again, in looking for flaws of teams going down the stretch, though, how many hits did Tom Brady take last night? I think it was in the range of 8 or 9 hits and pretty hard shots from a vicious Dolphins defense. We remember a couple of years ago when they lost to the Broncos in the playoff run. That was the undoing of that team. That was the early story in the most of this season, the amount of sacks Tom Brady took over the first half of the year. And if that's something that they don't get remedied, when they do play Pittsburgh and that defense that is slowly starting to look like Blitzburg again,
Except for last night.
I mean, listen, still found their way back to a couple of sacks. I'd be worried about that because, as we've seen, even Tom Brady can't overcome getting punched in the mouth that many times.
Well, that's the thing, and this is sort of the gamble the Patriots have made when they traded away Jimmy Garoppolo at the trade deadline for essentially what is going to be basically a late first-round pick. I mean, it's going to be in the second round, but it's going to be San Francisco, so you're picking 33, 34, 35. They're betting that Tom Brady can do this for 3 or 4 more years. And at that time, when they made that trade, this year's Patriots team had already given up more sacks than all of last year, and we're compiling on that. So, Tom can eat all the avocado ice cream he wants. Yeah. If he's not getting protected, that's going to be the biggest issue going forward.
Do you think he put out that TB12 book at the time he did to kind of put some of those fears to rest. Like, listen, guys, I know I'm taking all these hits, but I've conditioned my body to absorb these. I've got crumple zones like a car.
Well, he actually, he tries to go like a limp fish whenever he gets hit. Yeah. And people that played in the NFL talked to him said it is weird when you hit Brady. Sometimes people brace and they get all tense. With him, he literally does go limp like seaweed. He goes, it's impossible. It feels like you're sacking a piece of wet paper.
Unless you're blindside him and he doesn't see it coming.
That's the one.
Then you're going to feel it.
That's the one.
That's when the mineral water comes into play.
There you go.
And by the way, to your point, they were 2-2 in the first 4 games of the season. Last time they were 2-2 was 2014. Everybody buried them, and they went on to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, they did.
So they're a resilient bunch.
They're good that way,
is what we like to say. We continue with. We got to hit this one. There we go.
Off the top.
There you go.
Even better.
So if you had 6-10 as to when Trey would screw up something in the show, congratulations, you're a winner. The Rams snapped the 8-game Saints winning streak with a 26-20 win in Los Angeles. Jared Goff looks solid, 354 yards and 2 touchdown passes.
And they control the ball. They control the ball for over 10 minutes more than the Saints, and that's one way to beat the Saints is keep that high potent offense. And Kamara, what he's doing.
He's been great.
Boy, he has been something else. Him and Ingram in the backfield, and you know what you're going to get out of Drew Brees. But the talk this year had been that New Orleans defense. So now you're matched up against one of the best and most high-scoring offenses in the NFL, and the Rams and Goff still getting it done.
You see why Marshawn Lattimore is one of the Rookie of the Year candidates. In his absence yesterday, that secondary looked like it had a lot more trouble than we had previously seen. You combine that with an offense that, is going to flush the pipes defensively and show you where the weaknesses might be. Still saw some quality pass rush from Cam Jordan and those guys up front. These are two teams we are going to see later on. But, man, I found myself feeling bad for St. Louis yesterday. They've got to sit there and watch now.
You mean L.A.?
No, I mean St. Louis. The city of St. Louis. The Rams at 8-3 have now snapped their streak of 10 consecutive losing seasons, which have been tied for the Browns for the longest active streak in the league. Now they've got to watch this. They've got a young new coach with a weird facial hairline that I can't quite explain, coaching a great team. Jared Goff took a step forward.
Wait, what's wrong with his hairline?
His facial hairline, it goes straight from up here into the mustache.
Okay.
There's supposed to be a dip if you look right here, if you're watching on ESPN2.
Or choose not to.
This is the way it's supposed to look. The way he does it is an abomination. I can't explain it, but it's working for him, so do not change it.
There you go.
So we're taking hair advice from you. I just want to be clear.
Facial hair.
He did make that specific.
I just wanted to be clear.
No, my body of work has migrated south as the years have gone on. Gravity has taken its toll.
Well, my entire body has migrated south. That's a completely different thing. So enjoy it just being the facial hair for a while because the rest of it catches up with you, believe me. But that is something. Look, the Saints had basically been doing to other teams what the Rams basically did to the Saints. The Kamara and Ingram thing had been, it hadn't really been Drew Brees. It had really been about that running game, and the Rams defense, which had been suspect going into this game against the run D, really was the key in this game. So they had their 8-game winning streak snapped, and the Rams are. It's going to be really interesting. We'll get into that later.
Yeah, we will.
Just how difficult the NFC is going to be to navigate because there are 4 legitimate teams there that you feel that you're pretty good about. And we finish up
off the top
with what may be the most interesting development in a really crazy weekend in the SEC, both in football and in basketball, which we'll get to later.
Yes, we will.
On this show. But Tennessee has now backed out of a memorandum of understanding with Greg Schiano, Ohio State's defensive coordinator, to be the Vols head coach. That, according to our ESPN's Chris Lowe. The memorandum was signed in Columbus by both parties Sunday, but then Tennessee decided, literally the state, not the school, the state decided, no, that's not what we want to do.
This one we're going to get into a lot more in a little bit, but basically, for those that are wondering what went on, is people are looking at the connection when Greg Schiano was at Penn State from 90 to 95. There was an overlap with Jerry Sandusky and Mike McCrary getting back into it, who wasn't there then, but testified that another coach had said that Greg Schiano knew there was child molestation going on there, and Schiano's denied that. That coach in question has denied ever saying that. There's been nothing to show Schiano had known anything about that. But, man, Mike, they picked it up at Tennessee, the big rock there. They spray painted the rock about that. Politicians got involved. So you wonder, is there legitimacy to this, or is this just a mob mentality and then politicians jumping on top of that because they see their public, going one way and they want to go that way? There's a lot of tentacles to this.
Yeah, it tends to be an area where, listen, 2017 happens and the social media monster catches on to this, and when you've got a world that is so enamored with the headline but rarely explores the depths below it, you get something like this to where you wonder how many of the people involved. And Dan Wetzel from Yahoo Sports wrote a great piece on that and how he wondered aloud how many of the people that were actually out there chanting against the athletic director, against Greg Schiano, actually understood what was being accused here, how it was sort of a he said of sworn testimony on both sides. One side that we point to with what we heard from McQueary, but the other side of the coach that he mentioned who was also under oath saying that he never heard these things. So it's a really tangled mess that exposes a lot of the flaws about the way that I think fans and the public certainly consume these things and turn it around into something that at times it's not, but also how Tennessee's doing business down there and what it means for them going forward.
You're exactly right. That's another part of this. I think a lot of people were upset with the idea of Schiano to begin with, and then they found this as a way to latch onto that and sort of ratchet up their beliefs there. I mean, the whole thing with John Gruden, was he at that restaurant? Was he not at that restaurant? He's actually in Seattle when supposedly he's at that restaurant, in Knoxville trying to work out a deal there. So there's a lot of tentacles to that we'll get into a little later on.
A lot to get into with that.
With Booger McFarland. He'll join us a little later on Golic and Wingo. Okay, that was off the top. By the way, we are Golic and Wingo on ESPN Radio and ESPN2, presented by Progressive Insurance. All phone guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Tweet us at the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed. But let's now get into what everyone's talking about, brought to you by O'Reilly Auto Parts. Better parts, better prices every day. And I think we need to talk about something that was sort of the beginning of this show, what we saw out of Pittsburgh last night. This was a team in Green Bay that came in without Aaron Rodgers, that came in with real problems offensively the last couple of weeks, and they sort of hung in there for a while. They really did. I think a lot of people thought, especially when Pittsburgh went right down the field and scored on that opening drive, they missed the extra point. I get that. Okay, this is going to be Pittsburgh establishing their dominance over the Green Bay Packers, and this is a team that we're going to see maybe look like a little juggernaut. Maybe that can be, okay, we know that the Patriots can do all these different things, and once again, they had another big one. It was 35-17, I think was the final score over the Dolphins. They made sure that the Dolphins knew early we're the better team, and they sort of dictated to them. And people wanted to see that from Pittsburgh last night against a weakened Green Bay team, and it just didn't happen. And it leaves you wondering, okay, just how good is Pittsburgh at 9-2? Because, they had the big blowout over Tennessee when Mariota tossed 4 interceptions. But before that, they also had to squeak by an Indianapolis team that's also undermanned. Yeah,
this was a game. They had the 6-0 lead, and then they didn't have a lead again until the fourth quarter when they went up 28-21. Green Bay kept taking it. So this is a 14-14 game at halftime, 21-21 going into the fourth quarter. And you know what you're going to get. Again, you get 31 points, and you get Boswell to kick the game winner at the end. But you get 31 points, you think you're going to win. And the biggest difference to me, Mike, had been that Pittsburgh defense, which had played well. I thought, man, this is going to be one of the young, up-and-coming defenses that's playing better and better. But it still shows their some of their youth and their inconsistencies right now to let a team like the Packers, so undermanned without Aaron Rodgers, put 28 on them.
Yeah, you saw one of those first touchdown passes on a pretty bad blown coverage on the wheel route downfield, and that's the part that started to worry me because we had seen that group, I think, benefiting some. Now, obviously, they had invested some draft picks into that area of the field and brought some guys over, but it had always really benefited from that front seven for Pittsburgh and the guys that they've got up there to get after everyone. I mean, you draft Bud Dupree, and you've got Vince Williams in the linebacking core, Cam Hayward, Tuitt on the D-line, all of these guys that are pretty good at harassing quarterbacks, that are unbelievable athletes, and are the first group of probably any unit in the NFL that I would want coming off the bus. But the bottom line is last night it was still having those issues on the back end that have plagued them. And again, when you talk about where they want to go, these are the impediments.
Well, they are second in the league in sacks.
Yep, they're going into that game, 38 sacks. Jacksonville leads away with 41.
Jacksonville.
Pittsburgh has 38,
Yeah, so you thought that would be, especially against a guy like Hundley who, has mobility, but he hasn't looked comfortable in that mobility a lot of times. You watch him roll out, you watch him run, and you feel like he should be better at that part of the game. Mm-hmm. And so you thought that would be a place where they could dictate to him. Give Brett Hundley a lot of credit.
I completely agree with that. Yeah. He is finally kind of playing into, Mike McCarthy was adamant. This is our guy. We drafted this guy. He knows our system. He is going to be the quarterback. We're not reaching out anywhere else. And early on, it looked like, maybe this wasn't the thing to do. But yeah, he's kind of rounding in. And I don't know how much more we really should expect out of Brett Hundley, quite honestly. I'm not sure what we should think or how far we should think he should be able to take this team.
Well, the other thing, too, is you saw that before the game on the field, there was Aaron Rodgers throwing.
Right.
He was making some throws, cutting it loose with the collarbone. There's a potential in a couple of weeks that he might be able to get back, depending on where Green Bay is in this situation. But to the point about the defense, this was our Ryan Clark, who obviously played with the Steelers, their safety. He'll join us later on today. He says he just thinks Pittsburgh's defense isn't good enough right now.
In the last few weeks, they haven't tackled on defense, and they haven't communicated defensively. Those weren't the things we were seeing very early in the season from this Pittsburgh Steelers defense, which had improved greatly from the past few years. You can't do those things. You can't go into the weeks against teams like the New England Patriots and win like that. As New England Patriots has shored their defense up, the Pittsburgh Steelers are going the other way.
Well, and that's the key. If you're playing the Patriots, the two things you don't want to hear, we're not communicating well, and we're not tackling. Because Bill Belichick will exploit both of those things in a way that only Bill Belichick can.
Yeah, completely agree. And you look at that, as you mentioned, they take them on, December 17th?
Yep.
They have, they're at Cincinnati, then home to Baltimore, so a couple of division games, but the division isn't very good right now. Baltimore plays tonight. We'll see what they do. And then you mentioned New England, then they're at Houston, and they finish up at home against Cleveland. So, but everybody just zeroing in on that New England game, knowing these two teams are going to be there at the end.
Week 15 is what everyone in the AFC is looking at, unless you're the Kansas City Chiefs, and you're looking to find out where our running game went.
You're not kidding.
And where our offense went.
Happened.
And we will get into that. It's remarkable. We've done some of the numbers on NFL Live. It is amazing to look at the splits for the first 5 games and then what's happened since then with that Kansas City Chiefs offense. Golic and Wingo,
the podcast.
Trey Wingo and Mike Golic Sr. We've made it into the second hour of the first day, and the electricity is still on in the studio.
It really is.
Very happy about that.
They haven't turned us off, and nobody has sent an email that says, hey, come to our office and bring your playbooks.
By the way, Cliff, tremendous music bed. Love that.
Cliff. I am loving that a lot, Cliff.
Killing the music.
Good job,
nicely
buddy.
done. Trey Wingo, Mike Golic Jr.
One thing we will do as the show gets going, we will introduce you all to the people behind the glass. They will be all be on the show, be part of the show. They will all be huge parts of the show because the show would not run without all of them. So they will be on the show. They will be made fun of, no doubt about that. But also they will be patted on the back like Cliff there for some good music coming back.
And they're all friends in the fight against the robots that you guys are going to get into in a little bit.
Which we will get into later. And if this doesn't freak you out, you are not paying attention.
Way too much AI out there.
You are not paying attention.
Dangerous.
We'll get into that in just a little bit. Again, we're presented by Progressive Insurance, and all phone guests appear on the Shell Pennzoil Performance line. But just so you know, if you're watching us on ESPN2 and we have the donuts everywhere, and you're like, are those stunt donuts? Let me just say no.
No.
I wish you guys could have seen what happened after the last segment as both Senior and Junior just decided to inhale those donuts as if they were the last meal that they would ever have, and they hadn't had food in 3.5 days. The timing of it was impeccable for both of you.
It's donut day here at ESPN.
You're
There's
welcome.
Free donuts in the cab for the start of the show. How
I was going to say very on brand for this side. Donuts so heavy, by the way, that we did in the TV only segment.
You almost broke it.
I went to put it in here and replace. There was a bowl of fruit on the table that clearly was lost on the way over here. Never understood how that was a part of things to begin with, but I'm holding onto the tray, and I hear a crack, and I thought this thing was going to give way. I thought I was already going to be on the bill for something, because I figure at some point I'm going to break something or do something that they're going to cut into my paycheck for. I didn't think it was going to be that.
This first day we're being nice to you. We haven't even started on you yet being the rookie of the show. So,
well, listen, I think we all probably are going to have to pay for something at this point. That's the way things are going. By the way, just so you know, when you mentioned our great crew that we have behind us there, we put up a good shot of them up there. And one of my friends just texted me and said, that staff didn't look like willing participants in that shot behind the glass. So, guys, when the camera's on, smile, enjoy, okay?
Act like you like being
there
here.
It is. There we go.
It's
now we see a little bit more of the...
It's like a hostage situation.
It did look like a Stockholm Syndrome situation there for a while.
I was waiting for one of Ray Netchie to hold up a sign. Help.
Yes, send food.
Help us.
So... Just enjoy. That thing may show up every once in a while.
Listen, act like you like it or you're fired.
How about that? Because we have exactly none of that power.
No, we
just
don't.
want you to know that.
No.
And speaking of power,
oh boy,
who has the power now in the college football playoff system? The chaos that you always kind of want to hope for kind of happened. You had Miami lose on the road to Pittsburgh. You had Auburn upset Alabama. So this much we know, guys. The winner of the SEC between Georgia and Auburn is going to get in.
Yes.
The winner of the ACC championship game between Clemson and Miami is going to get in.
Pretty sure about that,
Maybe.
yes.
Maybe.
So let's see.
I think that the winner of that ACC game is in.
Okay, so the first things first. Here we had number 1 and number 2 lose. We had Alabama lose to Auburn. Auburn looks fantastic, by the way. And Miami, quite honestly, weren't we waiting for this? I mean, except against Virginia Tech, a ranked team, and Notre Dame, who was number 3 at the time, who Miami just destroyed. Miami was just flirting with this, weren't they? With average teams, they were flirting with a loss, and it finally happened. And congrats to Pitt, who did this to Clemson last year,
right,
when they were number 1 and kicked a field goal to win that game. So congrats to them. The last time both number 1 and number 2 lost in the same week in the AP poll was an ugly year for the people sitting in here, especially my son. It was 2012. In that year, I don't know for what game was it after? I forgot. You guys won. It was at Notre Dame, though. I heard you on the show this morning say we were all out getting a late dinner. We were at a bar.
We were at CJ's Pub in South Bend.
Yeah,
that's where you would get a late dinner.
We were
point that out.
We were getting
after
a
liquid
it,
dinner,
and we watched Kansas State lose to Baylor.
Yep.
And then we watched Oregon lose to Stanford, and we were all in there, and all of a sudden we were like, oh, my God, we're number 1 in the country. And then we went, oh, my God, Alabama's number 2 in the country.
I called a game.
Is that what we call a cold slap in the face?
Yeah, that was eye-opening.
Guess what?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
I called a game at Kansas State when they played West Virginia a couple weeks ago, and I almost asked Bill Snyder in there why they couldn't have just won that one game so we could have Alabama'd them in that national championship that year, but
didn't work out that way. So that was the last time 1 and 2 lost. So 1 and 2 lose. So I think, and I heard Mike, you talking about it on your show first and last, I think in any order you want, but I do think Clemson will be number 1. The top 4 teams are going to be Clemson, going to be Oklahoma, going to be Wisconsin, going to be Auburn.
Yep.
And every one of those teams controls their own destiny.
Correct.
Right. Every one of those 4 win and you're in. So then it gets to, okay, who's after that win and you're in?
But let's be clear, Georgia also controls their own destiny.
Well, no, that's where we're going now.
Yeah.
So that's going to be the 4.
Yeah.
So then what teams after those 4, who they obviously control their own destiny, win and they're in scenarios? Georgia, I completely agree.
Without question.
Georgia is going to be one of them, playing Auburn in the SEC title game. And then it gets to, and I know you kind of hesitated when Trey was saying he thought the winner would be in. If Miami wins the ACC title, do you think that's an automatic for them?
I think this is a scenario where, and I said the biggest lie the committee ever tried to tell us was that margin of victory doesn't matter.
That is true.
The how is going to matter for every other team involved. To your point, outside of the top 4, I think Georgia's the only one with the ace in. I think everyone else, Miami included, because listen, when you start to stack up, we're just talking about the glut of one-loss teams in the middle here. So right now it's Georgia, Alabama, Miami, and is there another one-loss team, or is that when we get to Ohio State already?
Georgia. No, then we get to Ohio State.
You get Ohio State with the 2 losses.
So you've got those 3 teams all in one glut. All have bad losses on their resume. And to that point about Miami's story this season has been a couple of spikes. We've seen a couple of spikes where they've won really well against a couple of good teams, and then the rest of the year flirted with disaster. You've got Alabama with 1 loss to probably, would any of us argue that Auburn might be the best team in the country right now? Clemson's going to be number 1 in this poll, but Auburn might have a legitimate stake as that best team in the country. So that's Alabama's only loss in a rivalry game on the road. So you've got that in tow for them, and the rest of the year they've been blowing people out. Hasn't even been close for the most part on the season, to the point where they beat LSU by 2 or 3 touchdowns, and we said that was a win for LSU.
So do we think, and we heard Nick Saban say he still thinks Alabama is worth it, and I get it, but does anybody believe that? They can get in, but they need help to get in. Look, so we know what the 4 is. Who do we think 5 and 6 is? Do we think Alabama is going to be 5 or 6, and then Georgia's going to be the other one? Could we possibly have 3 SEC teams in the top 5, or is Ohio State going to jump up and be 5 or 6 after their win last over Michigan?
Well, look, the committee has been pretty strong in saying that conference championships matter, right? They've said that for a long time. They believe so. It would be look, Alabama as a brand, absolutely is one of those teams that you think based on history, based on the last few years. But this year's defense has never been. I mean, they were close to losing to Mississippi State.
Yeah, they were.
That was
a lot of injuries, but that's the way it goes.
That's the business.
And when you
get
5-star athletes every year, nobody's going to feel sorry for you anyway. Let alone feel sorry for Alabama. They're not asking for it.
But let's assume that Oklahoma takes care of their business in the Big 12. Let's assume that the SEC, the SEC and the ACC champion are in. Okay, so at this point, are you going to take Alabama over Ohio State or Wisconsin?
No, not Wisconsin. Wisconsin wins, they're in.
Yeah.
They're 13-0, they're in.
So let's assume that Ohio State
wins,
which I think a lot of people think could happen.
Yeah.
If they tap dance on Wisconsin like they did the last time they played in that championship
59-0 or whatever it was, 54, some ridiculous thing like that.
Not to that extent, but let's say they deliver a hammer blow.
Yeah.
Okay, to Wisconsin. Are you now as a committee member going to say, "Hey, look, they won their conference championship, and they did it in decisive fashion.
Yep.
So are we going to not take them over the third team out of the SEC? That's a lot to ask.
It is a lot to ask, but at the same time, Ohio State is sort of the marker that goes against a lot of your points. They were the one-loss non-conference champion last year who got in over a two-loss team that won the conference and won the head-to-head against them. We started down this path to destruction last year, and all I would look at with them and say, the same thing that got Penn State last year could get them. Penn State got blown out by Michigan last year. Now, they were injured. They had 3 linebackers down in that game, and no one seemed to care because it was so decisive. Ohio State got routed by a 5-win Iowa team.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard to overlook.
Right. It was 55 to something. It was ridiculous.
That's why when people, back when they were still in it, people after, Notre Dame's close loss to Georgia and the blowout to Miami tried to say they're still in it. I said the committee's not going to forgive getting routed like that in a big stage.
By the way, the College Football Playoff Top 25 presented by AT&T Tuesday at 7 Eastern on ESPN and the ESPN app. It is going to be a must-watch after what happened here. And after the results are revealed, tune into the College Football Rankings reaction on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
That's what this guy right here, you and Jason Fitz.
Yeah,
exactly right.
They do it at your house.
Yes, yeah. It's live from the family room.
So you don't have to dress up like, you're not dressed up
anyway.
Okay, but here's the deal, okay? Based on the schedule, find me the best win for Alabama.
That's going to come into play.
That's going to be a part of this, isn't? Because Mercer's not going to count. Okay, Mercer's not going to count. So find me that signature win for Alabama that would say yes. This would allow them as a third team that didn't even make it to the conference championship game to be over somebody that won their conference.
LSU, which in the last rankings was number 18.
Mississippi State, who was up there before a horrific injury to their quarterback that definitely affected the outcome of that game.
Right.
And that's the one thing with Alabama. I think we're going to discount it because of what they were. Alabama played a different Florida State team than the one we saw the rest of the year.
That's also true.
They're not getting credit for that win where they had a healthy DeAndre Francois. That was before the hurricane hit and threw that whole region into disarray, and that team's season went into the tank. So I think Alabama played a Florida State team that was closer to the one that we expected. Maybe they weren't going to go out and be a national championship contender the way we expected for them based on what we saw from the rest of that team, but at the very least, they're better than what we've got now, and they don't get credit for that win.
So before we move on to the coaches, because there's a lot there.
There is a lot.
Do we think the Pac-12, they're not getting in? Pac-12, you have a rematch, Stanford and USC. So do we think the winner of that is not getting in? So let me just throw that out. Do we think they're out? Do we think if TCU, who plays Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship, another rematch of which Oklahoma won, if TCU wins, would they get in? I mean, so that's going to be
a lot of possibilities.
Yeah, a lot of possibilities with that. But I think, again, we know that it's going to be Clemson and Auburn, Wisconsin, and Oklahoma as the top 4 in whatever order it's going to be.
If those 4 all win their conference,
right? That's going to be tomorrow. That will be the top 4 in whatever order it's going to be. 5 and 6 will be interesting.
I think it's Alabama, Georgia.
You think Alabama, Georgia? You don't think Ohio State cracks 4 or 5?
Nope. I think it'll be Alabama, Georgia. I think Miami will be there. I think Ohio State will be at 8. I think they'll be at that spot Notre Dame was just in.
Here's another really interesting one. Okay, if you're UCF. What else?
You have nothing. Listen, I've said it before and I'll say it again, and I feel bad because not only are you having a great year, you're probably going to lose your coach, Scott Frost, who played at Nebraska, and Nebraska's job is open, so Scott Frost can take that job. So we'll let that all play out. A team outside the Power 5 is not going to make it until they go to 8. Until they go to 8 teams, a team outside the Power 5, unless they're playing a monster schedule, of playing Power 5 teams and winning, they're not going to get in.
Unless you did what Houston did last year. Had a chance to. If Houston had won out, they'd have been very much in that conversation, but they shot themselves in the foot on that one. So, yeah, that becomes your undoing with that, too. I'd agree.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So in other words, look, a lot of this will be sorted out again this weekend, but it's sort of set up because of what happened this past weekend, which is going to make this very interesting. And that's why I think a lot of people want to see this thing expanded to 8 because, for that argument right there.
Forgot the point I was going to make about Ohio State and all of this. The committee's supposed to factor in injury. Remember, J.T. Barrett left a lot of that game. They said he's going to be back for the conference title, but are we sure? Are we sure how much we trust that with the knee injury with the phantom cameraman on the sideline?
The phantom cameraman that Urban Meyer wants the investigation for, that will not happen, I don't believe, unless he does the investigation. So it'll be an interesting show tomorrow, interesting top 4. We know what the 4 will be, just not sure what order, and then who will be 5, 6, who's in position to make that move.
Yeah, Golic and Wingo, presented by Progressive Insurance, comparing rates to help you save. Now that's Progressive. Call or click today and find out how much Progressive could save you. So that was the on-the-field stuff. In college football, and most of it around the SEC with what happened with Auburn and Alabama. By the way, my favorite part of that game was watching all the Auburn fans get stuck in the hedges.
Unbelievable.
As they were trying to
just dropping off right into him and disappearing.
It's like that Homer Simpson meme where he goes back into the hedge. I'm in, I'm out, I'm in, I'm out.
Absolutely.
That was crazy. We had everything else going on, and of course all the coaching chaos that is now going on, not only in college football, but specifically in the SEC.
Right.
And obviously the big thing there, Chip Kelly going to UCLA, Dan Mullen to Florida, maybe Texas A&M getting Jimbo Fisher,
right,
which is a really interesting discussion.
It is.
Why that move might be that way.
Ole Miss did hire the interim coach, Matt Luke, as the head coach. Yep. So what's still available? Arizona State, Nebraska, where we think Scott Frost may go, Arkansas, Texas A&M, where Jimbo Fisher may go, Mississippi State, because Dan Mullen is going to Florida, and then Tennessee.
And then there's Tennessee. They had a memorandum of understanding with Greg Schiano, the defensive coordinator for the Ohio State Buckeyes, who, by the way, in full disclosure, he used to work here.
Yep.
I've worked with him a ton. Great guy. I mean, was always on time and did everything the right way here, and we enjoyed having him here. But obviously, it created an uproar in Tennessee for a lot of reasons. One, they thought they might have a chance at John Gruden, which they never really had a chance to get that.
Agreed.
And then, of course, there were some people who were still connecting the dots between Schiano when he was 25 years ago, I think, when he was an assistant at Penn State. And according to testimony from then Penn State assistant coach Mike McQuarrie, said that someone told him that Schiano told them he saw something going on with Jerry Sandusky when he was there, although Schiano has flatly denied that on several occasions, and the guy that told McQuarrie that has also denied that. It just became a convoluted mess, and then it created an uproar in the state of Tennessee, and they have now rescinded that memorandum of understanding, and it led to this. Here's Paul Feinbaum on the SEC Network and a Tennessee alum on the Schiano-Tennessee situation.
I've covered college football for more than 35 years, and I've never seen anything this bizarre or surreal. You can blame it on a lot of things, but in the end, there's one person who's responsible for this program, and that is John Currie. He's been in the job about 9 months, and he took way too long to fire Butch Jones. He didn't give himself very much time. He's been turned down, obviously, by John Gruden, by Dan Mullen, and now his third or fourth or fifth choice, Greg Schiano. This thing blows up, and it's just really going to be interesting to see the repercussions and the aftershocks, because tell me this, what reasonable coach is going to want to go to this university and take this job after this unbelievable embarrassment?
Well, that's the thing, isn't it, Mike Jr.? This is, maybe you didn't want him for a bunch of reasons. That's fine, but now you've created another situation that the school has to deal with.
You created a situation, and it starts with what you guys mentioned with Gruden. You ruined the management of expectations when all of a sudden that becomes something that people buy into because they're going to look at every other candidate through the lens of, well, it's not John Gruden. And so that's part of this, is I think if Greg Schiano was a better coach or a sexier name or a candidate that they liked more, the reaction would have been different, and that's the trouble with this. Like, the trouble with this is that it's based on, obviously, people coming at this from a moral standpoint, but it's a sliding scale with this morality where, well, if he was better at his job, this would probably be lesser. Clearly, he's a defensive coordinator at Ohio State. He got hired after this. when all this stuff was knowledge and came out, Urban Meyer had to address it and defended him. So are we comfortable enough morally to let him be a defensive coordinator where he's still influencing kids and being, the job of presiding over these young men? At what point do we draw the line? There's no clear answer because, again, we're outraged about something that's based on he said.
Telephone tag hearsay.
Yes.
That's all. Look, if this happened, it's awful, and the repercussions should be swift and severe, but there is no way anyone can actually connect those dots.
Wasn't he also, when we were looking at this during your show, Mike, wasn't he head coach at Tampa Bay when this was coming out and when the testimony was happening? And there seemed to be no uproar in Tampa Bay saying, well, we can't have this guy as our head coach if he's at all involved in this. Wasn't it around that time?
I'm trying to remember because the Washington Post article that sort of got all this going came out in 2016. I believe that's when some of the testimony was first.
Well, then he was definitely gone then. I know that it started was 2011.
The whole scandal surrounding Jerry Sandusky began in November of 2011. So during his coaching tenure there.
So I guess it's when it came out about that. I don't know the exact date.
But the Washington Post article was in July of 2016, if I'm not mistaken, where some of the testimony came out in that
article. Came back to Shiano. Okay.
And to the point, though, we talked about that Dan Wetzel article from Yahoo Sports that sort of details all of this. And the point that he made over and over was while that process was going on, we were going out looking for everyone involved in this. And to your point, Trey, rightly so. Anyone who was involved in this that we could show had knowledge of that horrific situation deserved to have their head roll for it. And it felt like between the civil suits, between everything that went on with the school and after, a lot of those people were pointed out and put into the light. Not Greg Schiano, though. No one went after him at that time. No one has since. And so now we're going off of, again, something that was thrown around in a civil suit involving the insurance companies paying out these things for some of the victims of this case.
And none of them went after Greg Schiano either.
No.
So I guess the question to be, is it because Urban Meyer at Ohio State said, I've done my due diligence, I'm fine with hiring him? Because I don't remember there being an uproar there.
There wasn't.
Right? This is his second year as defensive coordinator for Ohio State. There seemed to be no uproar when he was signed on to be the defensive coordinator. And Urban Meyer came out and said, listen, I have looked into this, I've checked into this, and I'm comfortable having him be the D coordinator. So you wonder, because the events surrounding it are horrific. That doesn't even need to be said. But to your point, Mike, you wonder how much of this is, you know what, we just don't want him as a coach. Yeah. I mean, that's where you really wonder where. But then once it started, now you're in social media of 2017. Now it's, what did you say, pitchforks and
everyone
fire.
lights their torches on fire. And when you've got a group, especially in social media, that's going to pluck the headline, and they're going to see all of these things that they can make into clever little quips down there, and it was all of these different things surrounding Greg Schiano down there, all the chants that you heard going on.
It was painted on the rock.
Yeah, right. When you can do it in all these ways that go viral, and then you lose the meaning. I mean, we've seen things well-intentioned lose meaning and be co-opted all over sports. And certainly not comparing the origin of the two here, but it seems it's dangerous. It is a very dangerous place to be because you start asking, how much truth do we need to run with something if we think it's grounded in a clear wrong? Like the Jerry Sandusky case, clear wrong. And so is any tacit association with that enough for you to use your job? That's the question.
And then how about this? Power of the people.
Yep.
Boy, when they brought it, I mean, they really influenced Curry again, a guy who's been there for just 9 months trying to make this decision.
And then it's going to be very interesting to see where they go forward.
Where do they go here? Yeah, who's taking this job? Exactly.
That's an interesting question. And just what is the reality of the job? That's the other thing. Everyone thinks that this job is their school is a great job, but sometimes does the reality measure up to what you think about it in your head? And that's a different thing that Tennessee's got to get to. All right, so we'll see how that unravels, because that will continue to be something we'll talk about for the next couple of weeks.
Because there's a lot of jobs open.
There's a lot. There's going to be some competition.
Right.
And a lot of guys will be like, I don't know about that.
Considering they were already saying that, considering the preamble to every coach taking their job was they looked at these two jobs and turned down Tennessee.
Exactly. Yep.
Golic and Wingo, the podcast.
What a day, what a show, what a time.
I tell you what, a great sports night last night. Yeah. No doubt about it.
1, 2, 3, 4. Hey girl, have you done something new with your scales? Using new moisturizer? Nice. It really brings out the hazel in your eyes. Oh, hold on. Are you using whitening strips too? Your fangs look good, girl. Really good.
A really charming snake charmer? Surprising. What's not surprising? How much you could save by switching to Geico.
Wait, what? Have you been doing Pilates too?
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
We have our first ever guest.
First guest.
On the new show, and of course, it's an offensive lineman.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it's a center. So let me get this straight. Jeff Saturday is here,
yeah.
Our fine ESPN analyst. He's a Super Bowl champion.
Yes, he is.
Twice a Super Bowl participant.
Right.
A 6-time Pro Bowler, a 2-time All-Pro, and a member of the Colts Ring of Honor. But clearly, the biggest title you have is being the first ever guest on the new show.
Absolutely. I mean, this is epic moment for me right here. You know, I almost want to just take the jacket off, lay it right here at the thing, and just, shoes, jacket, and just walk out.
It's a wonderful color suit you have on, but you're way overdressed for this. And what happens is, you'll see, my son isn't here. He'll be here at least an hour or so each day, and then he'll just be gone at some point. But what happened this time is he was going to stay, but we do have a hard, fast rule on the show.
Yeah.
Only one center at a time.
Yeah.
Okay?
I respect that.
So, and
we're not crazy.
Your credentials aren't credentialed his credentials, so he had to go and you get to stay.
He took the pass.
Yeah.
I respect that.
We swapped out a better center.
Yeah.
We're going to be honest
Man,
about
my
that.
wife is going to be all over you now.
You told it to me in the break, so that's really an issue for you guys to figure out. Okay? But, Jeff, as we're trying to figure things out here, as an offensive lineman with the Straight Talk by Straight Talk Wireless, best phones, best networks, no contracts, give us the straight talk on what's gone wrong with Kansas City.
And you named it. The offensive line is really struggling. But I'll say this, we talk about the Saints and kind of the resurgence of their run game. You talk about the Eagles and how they're running the ball and how the commitment to run has changed that offense and has allowed Wentz to kind of do what he's doing. 5 touches for Kareem Hunt in the first half yesterday. To me, that's an atrocity. Like, you can't, if Hunt is where you have to run your offense through to open the game up for Alex Smith, to open it up for Hill, even for Kelsey, trying to get him involved in the game, and you're only giving him 5 touches.
Real quick, could he be hitting a wall? Have you played with a rookie running back?
Very rarely have I seen running backs hit the wall.
Okay.
I mean, usually those guys. It's kind of one of those positions that they transition into the league faster than most other players, and they kind of get there. Once they kind of hit their stride, they kind of get that thing going. It's a snowball effect. They really start playing. But so many of their runs early in the year, you saw they were big hitters.
Yeah.
At the end of the game, third and fourth quarter, he's ripping one off for 30 or 40 yards. They had 22 10-plus yard runs in the first 5 games. They've had 11 since. But for him, everything was set up, jet sweep, little pitch here. It kind of became gimmicky. And now as you're watching teams kind of, pinch that thing from outside to in, it's tough for them to gain those tough yards inside. And that's really what they got to feature. They have to get to that type of mentality. I know Andy Reid doesn't always like that,
right.
But you're seeing Doug Peterson in Philly and what they're doing, and that's why it's paying dividends.
Look, you and I have talked about this a lot on NFL Primetime since week 1. You can tell how a team's season is going really by one thing, how their offensive line is playing.
That's exactly
because
right.
It opens everything else up. You mentioned Philadelphia. Look at what New Orleans has done. Look at what Minnesota has done.
That's right.
Okay? Minnesota's offensive line was atrocious last year. Suddenly, they're pounding the rock with their third-string quarterback and their third-string running back.
That's right.
Okay, let's be clear.
Yeah.
So they're doing all this kind of stuff, and you just don't see it happening in Kansas City. And I know people always want to see the flashy things, the wide receivers, the running backs, the quarterbacks. If you can't block people in front of you and keep people off your quarterback, none of that other stuff matters.
That's exactly right.
It doesn't matter.
And to your point, we do this all the time. We'll show the Kansas City Chiefs their plays, their little, their designs, all that kind of thing on primetime. We'll show, he's going to jet sweep, fake it this way, go that way. But at some point, even if you want to spread the offense out, which is what Reid wants to do, if you'll bunch set it tight, look at what the Saints are doing. Their tight ends will come in, one will block down, one will kick out. One of their receivers will lead up in there, and they're getting big runs with Kamara breaking big ones and Ingram. That's what the Chiefs are going to have to do. At some point, they're going to have to get everybody lined up in tight and go play a physical brand of football if they want to get back reestablishing that AFC West where they want to be.
So let's start in the AFC with New England, the standard right now.
Absolutely.
So who gives them the best competition right now.
Got to be the Steelers. I
Even
think.
after what we saw last night?
Yeah, and listen, last night, and to me, is an anomaly. 3 turnovers really kept Green Bay in.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing, too, they're playing coverage early when everybody's talking about it being a bust, but really it's a little quick screen, and Shazier got caught inside where the center could peel back and kind of catch him underneath. Hey, that's just a good design, right? Sometimes you get caught, so all of a sudden Hundley gets hot. They score 2 quick touchdowns, and it kind of feels like a game that it shouldn't have been, but you can't turn the ball over, and that's what Tomlin's going to stress going back in. But they did what they had to do. Sometimes you don't play your best, but you still beat those type of teams. That's what the Steelers need to do, just to stay in stride with the Patriots, to your point.
53-yard field goals, time expired for Pittsburgh to get that win. Brett Hundley did look certainly a little bit better.
Absolutely.
Still don't think they're going to go anywhere this year, but understandable without Aaron Rodgers. So we both think that as well in the AFC, that Pittsburgh would be that team. In the NFC, if Philadelphia is the standard, now you're getting to a few teams. Which team do you think gives them the most trouble?
And I've said this for the last few weeks. I think the Vikings are the best team to give them a shot. People were talking about the Saints because of Breeze and his experience, and I completely understand that. But if you look at the way the Vikings beat the Rams a couple weeks ago, 170 yards rushing. They're playing physical football up front. Keenum's doing what he needs to do, ducking, dodging, putting the ball to Thielen, making big plays when they have to happen. But their defense, all 3 levels, are fantastic, and they are flying around. Their front 4 will flat out get after you defensive line wise. We hear about Rhodes and that back end, even when Newman, who I don't know, he's 57 years old and still runs a 4.4. I don't know how it happens. 2 good safeties back there. So as you're looking at how they stack up, they can meet you at every level, and that's the impressive part of what they do. And Zimmer has them playing his style of football, which is, the games are they don't ever jump at. It's not like Philadelphia where they're up 28 in the first half. They're playing these kind of tightish football games until the end, and you kind of see them get that spread. Been very impressed with the Vikings.
Look, and yet Mike Zimmer still won't say that Case Keenum's going to be a starter for the rest of the
season,
which I don't understand. And look, I want to get into something else with you here, because when you played with the Colts, it was always the Colts and the Patriots. You guys weren't division rivals the whole time, but those were the rivals in the AFC.
Absolutely.
So you guys, there's a lot of bad blood between you guys, right?
Yes.
But did you ever have any bad blood, much in the same way Aqib Talib and Michael Crabtree seem to have the baddest of blood I can ever? That's 2 years in a row Aqib has taken that chain and just snatched it right off Crabtree. That thing unraveled in a hurry in Oakland.
I don't think I've had that much beef with anybody since elementary school. Like, we're going to drop our bikes and meet at the bike rack. Here's what we're going to do. And listen, like, you're looking at this. This is silly. It especially for Crabtree on the other side, when your season, you're getting back on track. And I understand he snatches your chain and does those kinds of things, but he's trying to get in your head. I mean, Talib, yeah. I mean, and as you're listening to Jack Del Rio at the end of the game, not only do you lose him, but Gabe Jackson, who's running in to kind of break this thing up and then hits a referee. So now not only will he miss, he's probably going to be suspended maybe for more than one game.
Right.
And you're losing a Pro Bowl-ish guard that you're going to depend on. Del Rio's already gone on record saying, hey, we're going to run Lynch more, we're going to do this. But to get that escalated, but here's the truth of the matter. When you see that play, what Crabtree does blocking him out of bounds, I get people are going to say, hey, that's dirty. It's still a 15-yard penalty. You're not getting kicked out of the game for that.
No, you're not.
And I'm not going to put myself over it, but I have driven guys out of bounds before just to send a message. I get that part. So you take your 15-yard penalty, you live to play the next play. Throwing hands like Talib's turning into a street fight right there, that's silly, and especially as bad as the Broncos have been, it's just putting more cloud kind of over where they are.
Couple things. First, I think it was my wife who said maybe next game Crabtree shouldn't wear a chain. I said not only is he's going to wear a chain, he's going to wear a bigger chain, because it's just now a contest between this two. Second, I said the exact same thing when people said, what did you think about what Crabtree did and then the fight? I said, first, great finish on the block.
Finish it. Inside hands position.
I mean, the finish
maybe
was
3
fantastic.
seconds too long, though.
But that's
3 seconds too long.
But to Jeff's point, he's absolutely right. You send that message, you drive him into the ground, and then you get your butt up and you go back to the huddle. And you just let that be the end of that story. Now you start punching. Now you get thrown out of the game. Now you've hurt your team. Now a teammate in Gabe Jackson comes over, gets thrown out as well. That's where it went awry. I don't care, so I'm 100% on your side. Drive him out of bounds, send the message, drive him into the ground. It's a great finish, and then get your butt back in the huddle and be done with it.
Take the penalty and live,
right.
The other issue for Denver going forward, I know we're running out of time here, but Paxton Lynch certainly didn't look like the answer yesterday for them. I think we should start a write-in campaign to see if wideout Mohamed Sanu can play quarterback for the Broncos.
Oh, wow.
Sure, 6 of 6.
Make a special exception for a trade deadline to bring him over.
We've seen Mohamed do this not only with the Falcons, but also with the Bengals.
Complete new quarterback next year for Denver?
I think so.
It's a mess.
Yeah, it's a train wreck right now. And you're trying to answer it in all different ways. There has not been an answer yet.
Yeah, you got her. By the way, the only good news for Paxton Lynch, he was the leading rusher in that game for the Broncos. And if Paxton Lynch is your leading rusher, that leads to another problem.
He didn't play well, but to be honest, that O-line is banged up. They were getting destroyed.
They are bad.
Yes, but they had a chance to put points on the board right away, and he's late on that.
He did.
Throw.
Oh, yeah, listen, I never thought it was the pick anyway by far, so
history has said nobody that tall is ever going to be that successful, and they have two of them: Brock Osweiler and Paxton Lynch. So
they doubled up.
Literally, they didn't double down. They doubled way up. Speaking of doubles up, Hefe, I'll see you later on today on NFL Primetime.
Thanks,
sounds perfect.
Thanks for being number one.
Thanks for being
yes,
number
sir.
one.
I love it. Someone had to fall on that ceremonial sword, and that, my friend,
trivia
was
question.
Honor.
Yeah. Trivia. I don't know if it's a good or a bad trivia question.
The most trivial
question
of all trivia questions
there
will
you
be
go.
that one. Our first ever guest. Jeff, thanks very much.
Golic and Wingo, the podcast.
It was all sort of one big giant Jell-O mold.
It's very interesting where that went.
I'm really excited about what's going to happen with the college football playoff system now going forward, because you wanted some of this, what we happened this past weekend with Miami losing.
Chaos. You want chaos.
And Auburn. Yeah, you want there to be uncertainty, because if it was going to be these four teams, blah, 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 then it sort of loses its little oomph. Now we got none of that.
Do you like a dominant team? Alabama had been that dominant team, whether it's college, pro, basketball, football, hockey, I don't care. Are you a guy that likes the dominant team?
I like to celebrate. I like extended success. I think it should be celebrated. Absolutely. But there can be a point, if it gets to be too much, there can be fatigue. And I think if you're honest with people, a lot of people around the NFL, probably not in New England, they're a little fatigued, I think, with the idea of they're going to win it all again. And they might, because they might be the best team. But historically, fans, will always say, I love the underdogs. You do and you don't. Like in the NCAA tournament, whenever one of those underdog teams makes it to the Final Four, those are usually the lowest-rated Final Four matches.
That's right.
You want the Blue Bloods. You want Duke. You want North Carolina. You want Kentucky. You want all those kind of schools.
I agree. I think the early weekends are for the upsets, and then the main weekend is for, as you put it, the Blue Bloods. And
we got Blue Bloods in and out of the playoff picture
we do.
Right now, which makes it great.
The same about wondering, if it gets old hat or not. Is the NBA. We'll have the commissioner on, Adam Silver, on in a half hour.
Right.
With Golden State. Oh, my God, Golden State, they're going to win it again. But you know what? The NBA has found a way to keep everything exciting.
Correct.
The offseason has been exciting.
The NBA offseason this year was unbelievable.
It was incredible.
Yeah.
And it's going to set up that way again next offseason while we go through a season of watching these new players on new teams. So, they found a way while you think at least one of the teams, if not both of the teams that are going to be back in the finals, they have definitely found a way to keep it exciting.
All right, so that's going to be coming up again. That show, the college football Final Four show, the reveal show, will be Tuesday night, 7 o'clock. We're looking forward to that. Don't forget, the 2017 ACC Big Ten Challenge gets underway tonight with a pair of games on ESPN2 and the ESPN app. At 7 Eastern, Maryland visits Syracuse while Wisconsin plays at Virginia. The ACC Big Ten Challenge continues through Tuesday with all games on ESPN, ESPN2, ESPNU, and the ESPN app. As we said, Golic and Wingo in our debut show. Hope you're along for the ride, and we're delighted to get our second guest.
Yes, we are.
So he gets the silver medal. But technically, hold on, as Dan Stanzik points out, he is our first phone guest,
right.
So Stanzik, way to go. Ladies and gentlemen, Booger McFarland joins us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Get instant gold status at Shell. Join the Fuel Rewards program now at fuelrewards.com/gold. Booger, good morning.
Top of the morning, and congratulations on the show, guys. I thought with the new show we would lose some of the sponsorships, but all Wingo is doing is just reading ad after ad after ad.
Hey, you got to feed the monster.
That's what they say about this show. How'd you do on the show? Well, did you get all the reads in?
Then you're good. We're good.
All right, Booger. So before we get to some of the Tennessee part of this, let's first run through on the field, then some of the other coaches that were hired that we think are good fits and maybe not good fits. And but let's start on the field. So we saw 1 and 2 lose in the AP poll. The first time we saw that since 2012 when Oregon and Kansas State both lost on the same weekend. So we saw them go down. We all think we know that the 4, whatever order it's going to be, is going to be Clemson, Oklahoma, Wisconsin, Auburn, whatever ranking they're going to be. In your mind, and so they all control their destiny. Other than those 4 teams, which next teams, if any, in your mind, control their own destiny outside of what we think the top 4 will be?
Well, I think you have to start with Georgia, because if Georgia wins against Auburn Saturday in the SEC title game, Georgia is in. I think next you go to Miami. If Miami beats Clemson and they're a one-loss ACC champion, Miami is in. I think after that, the next 2 teams we're going to talk about are going to be Ohio State and Alabama. And I think the conversation is going to end at that point. I think we basically have 8 teams for 4 spots. Now, when it comes to Ohio State and Alabama, I think we're all looking at those 2 because expectations are that Ohio State's going to beat Wisconsin. I don't know if it's going to be 59-0 like last time, but I just think that Ohio State is a much more talented team, regardless of which quarterback plays for Ohio State. And then we're going to have a debate. Who do you put in? Is it a 2-loss Big Ten champion Ohio State, or is it a 1-loss Alabama team who didn't play for the conference championship, who didn't win their division in the conference, but they've been the consensus number 1 team for a large part of the year? Here's the way I look at it. I think when you look at conference championships, to me, that can be a differentiating factor, meaning if I got 2 equal teams, let's start looking at some things that we can separate the teams by. Conference championships will be one of those. I don't look at a 1-loss team and a 2-loss team as being equal. So in my opinion, Alabama and Ohio State would not be equal. So even if Ohio State won the Big Ten championship and they're a 2-loss champion, if they're compared to Alabama, I would take Alabama in that situation because they have 1 loss, and I would not look at them as equal, so the conference championship would not matter to me.
Well, Booger, but the conference championship does matter to the committee. They've said that significantly.
Except last year.
Yeah, except for last year, right. But
it matters. The conference championship only matters as a tiebreaker when the 2 teams are deemed as equal. So head-to-head, conference championships, then they come into play. You first have to deem the 2 teams equal before the conference championship comes into play, is what we've been told.
Okay, so in your mind, is it the fact that there are 2 losses by Ohio State, or is it the fact that they had the big loss to Iowa makes them unequal in your eyes to Alabama?
I think it's a combination of both. I have a hard time saying that you can be one of the best 4 teams in the country when you losing to Oklahoma. There's nothing to be shame about that. But when you lose to Iowa on the road, you give up 55 points. You couple that with the loss to Oklahoma. To me, that would be a little much to overcome. And so I have a hard time saying you could be one of the best 4 teams and lose to Iowa by double digits the way they did.
You know, as I said earlier, we think we know the 4 teams that'll be in the top 4. We're just not sure what order. Can you make a case, or how strong of a case could you make that Auburn is the best team in the country right now?
I think you can make a very strong case regardless of the number of losses because of how they're playing. And, you know, it's kind of like NFL football, Golic, and Wingo, you'll understand this. If you're playing your best at the right time, it doesn't matter how many losses are in the loss column to a certain amount as far as college football is concerned. You can't have 3 or 4 like USC, but Auburn has 2. Some people are going to have them number 1 just because they're doing something that's unprecedented. They've beaten 2 number 1 teams in the last 3 or 4 weeks. They're probably going to have a chance to beat a Georgia team that's going to be ranked probably no lower than 5 or 6. So in the course of a month, they would have beaten number 1, and number 6. Nobody's ever done that. So you can make a case they're playing the best football, and they are the best team in the country. I'll go back to what I said at the beginning of the season. When they're healthy, the Clemson Tigers are the most talented football team in America. They seem to be healthy right now. I put a little bit of Golic's money and a little bit of Wingo's money on Clemson to win the title.
A very little bit of my money, let's be clear. A very little bit of my money, Booger. But hold on, but what you just said is interesting, okay? Because you said, look, Auburn, 2 losses, but they're playing their best football now. Let's take that sort of same scenario and put it on Ohio State. They took it to Michigan. with their backup quarterback for a long part of that game. And let's say they go and tap dance on Wisconsin. I'm not saying that will happen, but let's say it does happen. Couldn't you make those same arguments for this 2-loss team that they're playing their best football and playing as well as anybody right now?
Right, you can make that case. However, then you also have to compare them to whoever else is up for that fourth spot. So we were discussing Auburn as a possible number 1 overall team. I get that. So now if we're trying to figure out who the fourth team is, you're right about Ohio State. However, in order to get that fourth spot, in order to be in the playoff, you first have to earn the right to get in there. And so I think when you have 13 people on the committee, they're going to ask themselves, and listen, for every committee member, something is going to be more important. But I think at that point, you're going to compare 1-loss Alabama, 2-loss Ohio State. And it comes down to best, most deserving. Like we can put, there's a thin line between what matters to you. To me, I want the 4 best teams. And I have a hard time saying that an Alabama team that's been the consensus best team or top 2 team in the country, depending on how you look at it, they lose one game on the road at their rival in one of the greatest rivalry games in the country. I would have a hard time kicking them out after 1 loss.
Okay, so we're talking about a 2-loss Auburn team. If they win the SEC, they're going to be in. We're talking about the possibility of a 2-loss Ohio State team somehow finding their way in. How about 2 teams that'll be screaming that have 2 losses right now that are saying, hey, what about us? What if USC wins the Pac-12 against Stanford, who they've already beaten Stanford by, I think, 20 this year, or right in that area, 18 or 20 points. And then the other team, how about if TCU, which got smoked by Oklahoma already in the regular season, what if TCU, which has 2 losses, beats Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship? Do either one of those teams have any shot if they win their conference?
I don't think so. And here's why. I think when you look at USC, I just think that the committee doesn't view the Pac-12 as strong as the other conferences. And you could almost say that also for the Big 12. I think the Big 12, their only shot right now is Oklahoma. I just think when you look at TCU's resume, and once again, we're going to get into the beauty contest. Let's look at the resume. Who did you win? Who did you beat? Who did you lose to? I think when you look at USC, I don't think USC can gain enough by beating Stanford that will vault them up. Whereas if you look at some of the teams in front of them, taking a look at Ohio State. Ohio State's a 2-loss team, but they can beat Wisconsin, who's probably going to be ranked number 3 or number 4 at the worst. So they'll get a huge bump. I don't know if USC will get a big enough bump from beating Stanford to make that climb up from how the committee views them now, and the same can be said for TCU.
All right, Golic and Wingo on ESPN Radio, ESPN2. We're talking on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line with Booger McFarland. Don't forget the College Football Playoff Top 25, presented by AT&T, Tuesday at 7 on ESPN and the ESPN app. And after the results are revealed, tune into the College Football Rankings reaction on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. So, Booger, what played out on the field, whether it was Miami losing to Pittsburgh or Auburn beating Alabama, that was one part of the story of college football over the weekend. The other was the seismic shifts we've seen in college football coaching, especially in the SEC. And then, of course, there's the whole unraveling of the situation in Tennessee with the public outcry and campus protests. Tennessee is now not going to hire Greg Schiano. What do you make of how all of this transpired, and what happens now?
Well, I'll start with the coaching hirings and firings. I think we all kind of connected the dots with Dan Mullen to Florida. I think that's a tremendous fit for Florida. As far as Kevin Sumlin being fired from Texas A&M, the AD told us before the season 8 wins wasn't good enough. He didn't get to 8 wins, let alone get above that. So I think we all knew that was coming. Matt Luke at Ole Miss, under the circumstances, I don't think Ole Miss could do any better. Like, no one of any substance is going to come to Ole Miss with all the sanctions that are looming. Jimbo Fisher wanting to leave Florida State. Listen, guys, it's a bad marriage down there. Jimbo and Florida State, there are personal issues between he and the administration. They're not getting along. And from a coaching staff standpoint, Jimbo knows what he wants to do. The administration seems to want him to do something else. I don't know if they're going to split up, but it's a very, very tough situation. As far as Tennessee is concerned, guys, it's the most disheartening thing I've ever seen. I'm not a journalist. What I am is an analyst. And so as an analyst, I've learned to watch film, watch tape, read the things, and trust people who've been doing this a long time. And as far as the journalistic side of what happened with Joe Paterno and Jerry Sandusky and that whole deal. Dan Wetzel is a guy who I think is one of the better journalists in America. I'll put him up against anybody. He covered Sandusky up and down, round and round. And yesterday, when the reports came out that Greg Schiano and Tennessee had kind of entered into this agreement, basically like a term sheet, so to speak, that, we're with you, you're with us. And, all these shock jocks and everybody on Twitter starts bringing up and accusing Greg Schiano of knowing these different things. I wasn't there, nor were you guys. I trust Dan Wetzel. He covered this, and he basically said, you know what, if there was any evidence whatsoever that Greg Schiano knew anything about this, I would bury him. I don't know Greg Schiano. I've never met Greg Schiano. I trust Dan Wetzel. And for everybody in Tennessee, everybody connected to the Tennessee program, from the AD all the way down, to not have a backbone, to not have a spine, to stick by a guy that they chose. I don't care who was behind choosing him, whether it was the biggest booster or whatever. You chose Greg Schiano. And then you allowed the fans and the shock jocks and the other people to make you change your decision. What kind of spineless, no backbone thing is that? Tennessee is a program that I thought had a lot of tradition. It's a program that I thought stood for something. And you know what? It very well may be that at some point. But right now, they look bad. John Curry, the AD, he looks terrible right now, because how can you honestly tell me this? If John Curry called you right now and said, hey, don't worry about what happened yesterday, I want you to be the head coach at Tennessee, are you going to take him seriously? So how can he go about hiring the next coach? It's a shame. It's a travesty. I don't know Greg Schiano personally, but what I do know is Bill Belichick has vouched for him, okay? Urban Meyer has vouched for him. He's coached the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as a professional organization. So many people have vouched for Greg Schiano. Now all of a sudden Tennessee is too holy that they don't want Greg Schiano? Who the hell does Tennessee think they are right now? And I think they're disillusional, and I think they're ultimately going to pay the price for it. So the whole Tennessee deal just really drives me crazy about everything that's going on in Knoxville right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, John Curry, 9 months on the job to make this decision, and you're right. Now, as I'll ask you in a minute about taking the job, but you're correct. We don't know what went on. We have reports, but he's worked since then, and we've always said, I was Bill Polian always saying, as soon as you start listening to the fans and the boosters and whatnot, you're going to be sitting with them. So I agree with you. If you did your due diligence and you felt he was the guy, then you stay with the guy. Now there's going to be questions on whether they did their due diligence, which would bring up even more questions, about running that program and making those decisions. So on that note, Booger, with Mississippi State, Texas A&M, Arkansas, Nebraska, though we think Scott Frost will go there, ASU, with all that other competition, what kind of do you think Tennessee gets anybody other than an assistant coach to take a first-time head coaching job? Because I don't see them getting a name coach anywhere.
I agree with you. I think the only way, Golic, that they can get somebody that has any pedigree or any name, they're going to have to overpay. Meaning they're going to have to pay somebody $8.5 million to take the job. Okay? Everybody's saying, well, we wanted John Gruden. It's a pipe dream, guys. Hey, John Gruden has never told me anything. I'd almost bet my left arm he'll never coach college football. All right? I've been around John Gruden a long time. I'm not going to speak for him, but I played for him. All right, he's a pro football coach. So every school out there who wants John Gruden, understand this. He's a pro football coach. All right, he's not a college football coach. All right, and John, if I'm speaking out of turn for you, so be it. Just call me, okay? But every school out there goes through this pipe dream every time, saying, "Yeah, we want Gruden, we want this," and then when you don't get him, you're disappointed. I think Nebraska is in a very, very tough situation. It's a national program that is having a hard time recruiting nationally. So it's a tough place to be a coach at. Scott Frost, from what I'm hearing, is having cold feet just because of that reason. I wouldn't be surprised, guys, if Scott Frost stays at UCF. Okay, so it's a lot going on out there in the coaching realm. But as far as Tennessee deserves whoever they get. Whoever they get, they deserve, especially if this AD is going to be the guy that's hiring it. And all the politicians who chimed in saying, well, we don't want this guy because of morals. Really? Politicians now are talking about morals? Like, Tennessee has got this whole thing screwed. Hopefully the other schools out there, A&M, Nebraska, Arizona State. Hopefully they understand who they are and hire a guy that fits their program.
It is amazing with all the stuff that's happened. We haven't even really discussed the idea of Chip Kelly at UCLA.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Think about all the crazy seismic shifts that has happened. And, Booger, the idea of Chip Kelly back into the game and going to a place like UCLA, where obviously it's an easy place to recruit because Los Angeles, nice place to visit, nice place to live. A lot of people want to be there. There's been so much insane stuff that's happened. We haven't even really talked about that part of this thing yet.
And to me, UCLA hit a home run. I'm talking about bottom of the ninth.
Yep.
Bases loaded, down 3. They hit a grand slam. I came into this season, guys, not knowing much about Chip Kelly, but I really didn't respect his offense because I don't like offenses that go sideline to sideline and they're really soft. Like, I don't like those. I like a physical football team. But over the last 3 months, I've spent every Saturday with Chip Kelly in the green room at ESPN. And all we've done is laugh and joke and talk football. And while talking football, I've got a newfound respect for Chip Kelly because he's very well organized. He's detailed. He understands football. And more importantly, he understands how to run a program. And so I went into this year not really knowing and really not understanding Chip Kelly. And now I think Chip Kelly and UCLA is a perfect marriage. And I think he's going to do well. He goes back to an area of the country that he knows well. He can recruit the West Coast. And guess what? If he can win at Oregon with 2- and 3-star guys, think about what happens when he goes down on Rodeo Drive and gets those 5-star guys that are in L.A. I think it's a home run. Chip Kelly, to me, is going to do well. UCLA has invested in him. He's there. To me, it's the home run. But because of all this other foolishness in Knoxville and other places, we aren't talking about Chip Kelly. But Chip Kelly will have us talking about him before long on the football field.
Well, Booger, we appreciate you talking with us. Booger. The first ever phone guest on Golic and Wingo.
Golic and Wingo, the podcast.
Let's not expect too much. There's only one person out there that's expecting way too much out of this guy too early. We know who that is. It's his father.
We continue on Golic and Wingo, our first morning, and we're still here, so that's a good thing. We're still on, 2.5 hours in.
Now we got a really important guy, though, on.
We do. And
Don't screw this up, Wingo.
This may help us. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. All phone guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance line, and one of those now is the NBA Commissioner, Adam Silver. So we're delighted to have him on our first ever show. Adam, thanks for being with us this morning. How are you?
I'm great, and thanks for having me on, and congratulations on the new show.
Well, thanks very much.
Appreciate that.
So far, we're 2.5 hours in, and it's all going well.
Still on air.
It's amazing. We've already beat the under on a lot of people's lines.
Is Mike Jr. still there?
No, he left.
We sent him home to bed.
Yeah, he had to go take a nap.
He'll be back tomorrow, but we sent him home, and we sent him a grocery list to bring things for us.
All right.
But let's talk about the situation that sort of has been a big deal with you, Adam. Adrian Wojnarowski reported earlier this month that you and the Players Association head, Michelle Roberts, met with the NCAA's new committee on college basketball about possibly doing away with the one-and-done rule, which you've been made clear that you don't like. So where do we stand on this? What's the perspective, and where do we on the idea of maybe this not being the case anymore?
Sure. So what I've said about the one-and-done rule is that it doesn't appear to be working for anyone, and I think it's especially now we're hearing from college coaches, college administrators, and the NCAA directly that their view is that if these young men don't want to be in college longer than, in essence, one season, they probably shouldn't be there. And from our standpoint, probably the most important issue is the development for the players before they come into the NBA. So if we're now at the point where the colleges no longer want them and these guys the players now seem a bit disillusioned with their semester plus playing even in these top college programs, I think it means we have to re-examine our policy. I mean, historically, we've wanted to be even older, which was we wanted to go from 19 to 20. But hearing from a lot of the one-and-done players who are now in the league, I think, and their sense that they could potentially get better development playing professionally at a younger age, I think we and the Players Association, it requires both of us to change the rule, are rethinking our stance. Historically, they just wanted to go from 19 to 18, and we wanted to go from 19 to 20. But now looking at the league, looking at the number of one-and-done players who are coming out, we had 20 players. We have a 2-round draft, so 20 out of 60 were one-and-done players last year. The projections are it's going to be about the same this year. So it's, again, Condoleezza Rice was appointed head of a committee by Mark Emmert at the NCAA. I was asked to go down and speak to the committee. Michelle also spoke at a separate time. And again, this needs to be collectively bargained, but I think both Michelle and I agree we should sit down and start discussing what's in the best interest of the league and what's in the best interest of basketball.
Yeah, and as far as the lottery, 11 freshmen were drafted in the lottery, the most in a single year in the common draft era, which began in 1966, broke the previous record of 8 in 2015. So, again, as you said, it's your guys' rule, and you can't change it. And I know you want to get all the feedback from the colleges as well, but what discussions, if any, have you had with Michelle Roberts about this, and where do they stand at this point?
Really, the only discussions we had when we extended the collective bargaining agreement last year, that generally this is something that's handled during formal collective bargaining. We both agreed, though, that we didn't need to necessarily approach this in an adversarial way, and that let's get our extension done with the collective bargaining agreement, the term, money, etc., and then turn back to this issue. And our labor committee is still in place. Michael Jordan is the chair of our labor committee. Chris Paul is the president of the Players Association. They still have their executive committee in place, and it's a little bit tough in season, frankly, given everyone's schedule. But Michelle and I spoke to each other when we were both down in Washington, D.C., speaking to Secretary Rice's committee, and we said, let's get back, find a time where we can sit down and start discussing it. Again, right now, we're in the process of collecting a lot of data, too. You mentioned just now that it was a sort of high watermark last season in terms of one-and-done players. I think part of what we're going through now is to understand exactly what happens to those players once they come into the league, who's been a bust, which players have been most successful, what training have they gotten it. And incidentally, I mean, everybody focuses on 19 versus 18 or 20, but I think to look at it holistically, we have to look much younger, too. One of the things I've talked about before is I spend a lot of my time looking at how international soccer does things, Bundesliga, English Premier League, etc. And there, it's well known, it's not a function of 18. Players are being signed roughly at 14. And I'm not saying we're going to 14-year-olds, but I think we all have to look at junior development as well. And that means whether the existing AAU programs are the best way to train our young players. A lot of our top players now, and it surprised me as I've gotten more into this issue, don't even play high school basketball anymore, traditional high school basketball for their high school teams. They play AAU full year round, and they really aren't part of a high school system. So, and on top of that, obviously it's well known there were a series of indictments around college basketball involving some very well-known legendary figures around the game. So I think we need to see how those investigations pan out. But, the most important thing for us is what is the best way to go about developing the best players in the world? It's interesting. I've talked to some of our young international players recently. When they come through the NBA, I asked them how they developed. And the international players, I mean, they sort of laugh when hear us talking about 18 or 19 because almost all of them became professional, at 16. They went into an academy system when they were 13 or 14. So, again, that international basketball models international soccer in many ways. And it just means to us that, we really have to holistically look at the best way to develop these players.
Well, that'll be certainly something fascinating going forward as Adam Silver, the NBA commissioner, joins us. And I do have to ask, according to ESPN's Don Van Natta and Seth Wickersham, they reported that you were contacted by an unnamed NFL owner about possibly gauging your interest in running the NFL. They reported you immediately turned down the offer. Can you enlighten us anything more about what might have happened there?
No. I'll only say I love my job, and I view myself as a basketball guy. This is my 25th year in the NBA. I'm a huge fan of our league, of course, but also of college basketball. And other than being a Giants fan, I can't say I know all that much about football anyway. So I'll remain a football fan.
That's a fair response.
I have no plans
Adam.
to go anywhere.
Gotcha.
My only follow-up would be, so did you at least have a phone call?
No comment.
Ah, there you go. Okay, I tried.
You're such a journalist.
Well, that's how I roll. There's another issue, and really we're talking about these big topic issues with you because the game is really running incredibly well right now. A little more than 3 years ago, you wrote a New York Times op-ed that declared legalize and regulate sports betting. 3 years later, where are we with that? Where do you stand? We've talked to Roger Goodell. We know where the NFL stands on this. We've certainly talked baseball, where they stand on this. Where are you 3 years removed from this piece?
It's interesting when we published that piece 3 years ago, I would have never predicted that actually next week in front of the Supreme Court, the legality of the New Jersey state law permitting, in essence, sports betting within the boundaries of their state is being argued, and which means that the state of New Jersey has challenged the constitutionality of the federal law that, in essence, bans sports betting other than in Nevada and a few other exceptions. We challenged, we defended that law against Governor Christie. That began before I became commissioner. And I'd say largely because, at least now, our view is that it should not be regulated state by state, that there should be federal legislation, that it is proper for Congress to address this issue. But my position, which is a little different than my predecessors, has been that we should regulate it, we should legalize it, because it's not to me an issue of whether I'm pro or con sports betting. We know now that it goes on largely underground. Hundreds of billions of dollars are bet every year just in the United States on sports betting. Back to what I was saying about following what happens internationally in soccer, it's legal in most other jurisdictions in the world, particularly in Europe, where people bet on their smartphones throughout soccer games. It's closely regulated. They can monitor if there's any irregular activity, something we can't do right now because it's largely all illegal. So I'd say where I differ from the state of New Jersey, largely it's that I think there should be federal policy. It should be consistent from state to state. I think states should be able to elect whether they want to be in or out. If a state doesn't want to have legalized sports betting, they shouldn't be forced to do it. So I agree it should be a state decision, but I worry a little bit in terms of the monitoring of it, the integrity for the sports leagues that need to follow it, that if you have 50 states all competing against each other, it could be a bit of a race to the bottom in terms of ultimately how to do the best job protecting consumers, the people who place the bets and protecting the integrity of our league. But I will say from 3 years ago, I'm surprised things are happening so quickly, that again, this issue isn't before the Supreme Court next week. They'll likely decide the case by June of next year. And so, and I think even if the Supreme Court leaves in place the existing federal law, I think there seems to be a lot of interest in Congress in favor of addressing the issue. And I think in part because states see that this exists and they figure they might as well regulate it and also collect tax money on it, frankly.
Absolutely. Adam Silver with us, NBA commissioner. And listen, we're running up against the clock here, but I did want to ask you this one question before we let you go. The NFL sort of experimented with camera angles to make some of the games, especially the game last Thursday night between the Titans and Steelers, a low-angle camera, sort of making it look more like a video game that kids have played, the Madden game, all these years. Does the NBA have any ideas to sort of change up camera angles and try different things like that as well?
It's interesting. I mean, back years ago when we were still on NBC, sort of legendary sports producer Dick Ebersol was still in charge of NBC, and he was one of the first to experiment with a Skycam, even before they were using it in the NFL. And I think even Dick would acknowledge that it was making people dizzy, so he moved away from it. But I think the technology has gotten much better. And one of the things that I've said recently, when you watch our games, I mean, the clarity has gotten so much better because of high definition. Absolutely. But they're still produced essentially the same way they were produced 30, 40 years ago with the main play-by-play camera going back and forth. And I think given the personalities of our players, people want to see their faces. They want to see their expressions. They also want better audio. I remember Bob Johnson, when he was owner of Charlotte, who created BET, I remember he said on a panel that watching an NBA game is a bit like a silent movie, that you don't know what the guys are saying. But if you sat courtside, you can hear them. So it's not as if they have an expectation of privacy out there. And I think we can do a better job with cameras, again, whether they're on Skycam type approaches, but also with the audio as well to bring fans closer to the game.
Well, that would be fascinating, and you do see that more and more. People want to hear what they're saying, right. Those little snippets. Everybody wants access.
Absolutely right,
and that's why you see those things in the locker room, whether it's in the NBA or the NFL as well. Adam, we appreciate you being with us on our inaugural voyage. Thanks so much for the time. Always enjoy talking to you, and the topics are always fun. Thanks for being with us, Adam.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, Mike and Trey, good luck with the show.
Golic
makes me want to vomit and then punch you square in the face.
And Wingo.
Oh, he's saucy today.
Some of the best guests show up in person, and that is Ryan Clark. Joins us in studio, giving us the Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. There's a lot of things we can get into with you in college and the NFL, but as a former DB, I got to start here. What did you make of the Aqib Talib Michael Crabtree showdown, the sequel in Oakland Sunday?
Well, first of all, here's my largest problem with Talib. Yeah. When he threw to the left, why are you ducking? You got on a helmet. You know what I'm saying?
Crabtree got no helmet on.
Right.
Aqib's got a helmet on. You should be leaning.
Right. You should be going straight forward.
Yeah.
I think the one thing is it was ugly. You know what I mean? This is definitely not something you want to see. Both of those guys were dead wrong. But I take it back to the first chain snatching incident last year, right? Nothing happened. Remember, like Crabtree didn't fight him. Crabtree didn't react. But there also wasn't much talk about how wrong it was or what it could lead to. I mean, when you snatch a guy chain, first, I don't think you should wear them. But when you snatch a guy chain, it's beyond football now.
Right.
And for any of us who've ever been in an altercation and has been the bigger man, it bothers you. Yeah. You know, like when a guy gets in your face or disrespects you, and you're like, you know what, I'm going to take the high road here. You know, you sit around like, man, should I have done something? You know, did this guy.
A lot of testosterone on
right,
the field.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and so then it gets to this point, and really, when you see what Crabtree did, like, I like that. He was like, you know what, I'm not going to, at first at least, I'm not going to punch him. I'm not going to be dirty. I'm going to finish a block. I'm going to do this through physicality and pads, which I thought was good. And then it just turned into something else, and we now know that all football players shouldn't be boxers.
Let me tell you, I'm with you on the chain thing. You just see nothing but bad things when you see the chain come out, and especially with the history of these guys. My wife had said to me, well, maybe next game Crabtree shouldn't wear a chain. I said, not only will he wear a chain, it may be a rope chain. It may be some monster chain.
Run DMC all the way.
Yeah, it'll be the turnover chain.
The turnover chain.
No question.
I'm with you. Jeff Saturday said the same thing. I was on Twitter with Jeff Schwartz, a former offensive lineman. We were talking about it. I loved that Crabtree finished that block out of bounds. You know what?
That's what you're supposed to do.
But even if you get 15, take the 15, send the message, but then get up and get back to the huddle.
I agree with that.
Don't start the boxing match where you both get kicked out, then your teammate runs in, and Gabe Jackson, and he pushes a ref and gets thrown out. It got ugly where it didn't need to.
Right.
And I don't know what the next part will bring with this, but I guess then the larger question to this is, we thought the AFC West was going to have, 3 teams in the playoffs.
Right.
And now you have one that keeps losing, yet they're winning the division because all the other teams keep losing.
They're kind of making it fun, though. They're making it fun in like a bad way.
Yeah.
The one team that may make it may be the Chargers.
Yeah. Starting 0-4.
If you watch all 4 of them play right now, they're the team that scares you most. I mean, nobody can block Ingram and Bosa.
Nobody.
Phillip Rivers is the ultimate competitor. Keenan Allen's now come along and got healthy. This team is scary, especially when you're playing ball like the Chiefs are. You're playing ball like the Denver Broncos and the Oakland Raiders, who we never know what we're going to get week to week, but we know it won't be good. And so, you know, right now, that's the one team in the AFC West, if you're an AFC team that you don't want to make it, is the Chargers.
You more surprised at the fall of Denver or the inconsistency of the Raiders?
The fall of Denver, because of the way it looks.
They were 3-1.
Right.
They were 3-1.
Exactly, because of the way it looks. And it seems, and you know, John Elway used the word soft. I won't use the word soft, but the things we thought we knew about them, which was defense, and it was physicality, and the way that they rushed the passer and stopped the run early on in the year, those things have gone away. Not only can you not score the ball, but you can't do what you were once really good at.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And it goes back to with Denver, really, the quarterback situation's a mess. I mean, Trevor, when they were blocking and were able to run, Trevor was a fine quarterback.
Exactly.
But once you take those things away, Trevor can't be the guy that's going to sling it all over the field. We saw what happened with really 3 of the worst interceptions I've ever seen in one game, that game against Kansas City.
Yeah, it was,
He was a Waffle House, as Herm like say, just serving them up. Just serving up.
So, yeah, he was like Oprah now. You get a pick, you get a pick.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And so... But when you look at this team, I just remember last week listening to Vance Joseph talk about making a coordinator change, and he felt like what he wanted to do was have a more competent passing game and not turn the ball over. Sometimes that's not the coach. It goes to the guy that's taking the snap, and they don't have a guy. So you have to kind of start looking at John Elway, who understands and who knows the quarterback position. Is he going out and getting the right people for these coaches to teach?
And again, the 2 quarterbacks he has on his roster now besides Simeon are Brock Osweiler and Paxton Lynch. Both are 6'7", and we've never seen a quarterback that tall be that successful in the NFL. So they've got to get that figured out. But Denver's, they're done. They're lost 7 straight. One other team in the AFC that is far from done, although it was a little tighter last night than I think as a former Steeler you would have liked it, was the Pittsburgh Steelers. They got the great kick from Boswell to avoid overtime, 31-28. What did you take away from that game as a Steelers fan? Obviously, you're happy with the win, but...
Well, first thing I take away, Antonio Brown's really
that catch
really good.
Can't
get him in the field goal.
Like that's my expert opinion, Trey. I don't know.
Way to break it down.
I just want you guys to know, man.
That limb is pretty sturdy that you went out on there.
Hey, I just want to. Sometimes you got to go out on a limb and make some bold statements. Looking at this defense, which I thought had improved early on in the season, obviously Joe Hayden is missing right now. But when you look down the line and maybe having to go to Foxborough or facing Tom Brady, people can't be wide open.
Right.
People can't just run free in your secondary. You can't miss tackles the way that they've missed tackles, even watching the Indianapolis Colts, who had an opportunity to beat the Pittsburgh Steelers. They need to shore up the tackling and find ways to be closer to people, make hard throws. It's Brett Hundley, a guy who I've been on the record as saying this, I don't think was ready to be a starting quarterback in this league. And last night he looked good. He got in a rhythm because there were people running wide open in the Pittsburgh Steelers secondary. And they can't have that if they have dreams and aspirations of, as Coach Tomlin would say, hoisting the sticky Lombardi.
The Steelers?
The sticky Lombardi?
Yeah, because he says everybody like touches it and kisses it.
Right.
Which is why I never actually touched it after the game, because all I would think about was he's like, it's sticky and people are touching and kissing it.
I would be touching it and kissing it and doing all those things to it.
Yeah, I did it. I made love to it on the plane.
Okay.
Actually,
important information.
Way more information. We do appreciate that very much.
Ever want to touch Lombardi?
But to your point, they're second in the league in sacks, only behind Jacksonville, which means nothing if you can't cover and the quarterback can throw in rhythm. Yep. Quarterback throws in rhythm. It doesn't matter what kind of rush you get; they're going to get rid of the ball. So let me put you on the spot because you just said that about Antonio Brown. Standing in front of you are two receivers, and you can only have one.
Julio Jones.
Okay, there you go. That's what I'm saying. Antonio Brown, Julio Jones. I would take Julio Jones as well.
Just for the size.
I was, and I said it last night on TV. I think Antonio Brown is the best receiver in football. One, because of the targets, and also because of the amount of catches he makes when targeted. But when you're drafting the guy and you're taking the guy, they don't make Julio Jones.
No, they
don't. He's
freak,
Loch Ness monster.
Yeah.
You never see that type of guy, and for that reason, I take it.
Well, what's the stat? He had 259 yards receiving. He's the only player in NFL history with multiple.
Yeah.
He got 3 of them.
Ridiculous.
Nobody else has more than one.
Record.
He got 3.
Yeah,
more importantly, on DraftKings, he got you 53 points.
Yeah.
Which,
Did you have the money, by the way?
No, my son Mike had him. Had him and scored big there.
But the smart goalie.
Yeah, well, whoa.
But to that point, real quickly, we talk about all these teams. Is Atlanta sort of finding their rhythm again?
They are.
They sort of become what we thought they could be before that little meltdown?
We're talking about the Saints. Been talking about the Saints lately, and I was talking about the Saints' 3-game stretch of Rams, Panthers, Falcons, and I was like, by the end of this, the Saints could be third in the NFC South. And you knew eventually, with all that talent on offense, the Atlanta Falcons would find their way. They still need to shore some things up on the defensive end, but you knew they'd start to score points, and we're seeing that now.
So along those lines, we've been asking pretty much every football analyst this, is we think that the Eagles, rightfully so, are at the top of the NFC. Which other team, next team, or which team in the NFC would give them the best competition the way they're structured and the way Philly's structured?
I'd been on the record as saying the Saints because I believed in Drew Brees more than all of these other quarterbacks. Whether you're talking about Goff or Case Keenum. With the way Minnesota is playing defense right now, and that's their one consistent. The Saints, it hasn't been as consistent as you would like, especially down the stretch with some of the injuries in the secondary. If they play today, as the teams are, the Minnesota Vikings, because when you can lock up on the outside, rush 4, it at least gives you an opportunity to make things harder on Carson Wentz. If the Saints get some more guys back healthy and his defense can play like they did through that 8-game stretch, I may change my mind. But today, on this Monday, watching games this week, and the Minnesota Vikings seem to be the team that would give them most trouble.
Which means you're all in on Case Keenum, which seems to be more than the Vikings.
Coach.
I mean, Mike Zimmer, by the way,
he makes it really difficult.
Coach.
He does, doesn't he?
He's a great coach. He had a half a smile the other day. I thought it was awesome that he actually has the facial structure or muscles that turn that lip that
Goes
way.
Up?
Yeah,
instead of down, turn that frown upside down. Yeah.
That way. And it's hard to not be all in on Case Keenum.
What are you missing?
When he's shown you week in and week out that he can produce, and he seems to have this rapport with the receivers in Minnesota that we haven't seen under Mike Zimmer, period. No matter who was quarterbacking. Sam Bradford, Teddy Bridgewater, we haven't seen this type of consistent good quarterback play.
Well, and that's the amazing thing. Look, and I get it. The Teddy Bridgewater thing, first of all, the fact that he's back from that injury is amazing, and you want him to do well, and you hope everything goes well for him. But when you hear people say, well, our upside's better with Teddy, how do you know that?
Right.
How do you know that? Based on what? From 2 years ago?
But do we not remember them saying that or having the word that Teddy Bridgewater was actually holding the passing game back in a way?
He couldn't push the ball down the field.
Push the ball down the field.
So he's not saying he can't do that later.
Right. So, so that was kind of the narrative. So from the sample size you have, he has never outplayed Case Keenum, the guy that is playing now. And what happens is, and you guys know this, you have a perception of a dude before he starts playing.
Correct.
Case Keenum, we thought Case Keenum was this one thing. We've always seen him as that, and it's very difficult to change that perception to many people. And I think for Mike Zimmer, it's extremely hard to finally move on and say Case Keenum is the dude we've seen in 2017, not the guy that came into the season as the backup.
It's interesting. We talk of the NFC, obviously Philadelphia and Minnesota, New Orleans, we mentioned Carolina, Atlanta, the Rams and what they're doing. Have we given up on Seattle because of the injuries in the secondary and no running game and the O-line worries? Are we pushing them to the side?
It's kind of crazy, right?
Yeah, it is.
Because they're squarely in the hunt.
Yep.
You're one game behind the Rams. You have a game against them at home, and so this is a team who could still fight to win the NFC West, and we don't talk about them. I think it's about the optics. It's the way it looks. As soon as Russell Wilson snaps the ball, he starts doing like twirly derby. Right, yeah, exactly.
Where am I going?
Right, like, where am I going? And then he's like, okay, when I get out of the pocket, now I'll find a guy. But it's been working for them. And if you look at their schedule, they can win every game. You have Philadelphia coming into their place next week, which is a huge game.
Yeah.
And so they just don't seem like the team that can win it all. They don't seem like a team that can win the championship. And now Seattle has set such a high precedent and the bar is so high for them. That is the way we measure them. We don't measure them on ability to compete and be competitive.
Well, that's the interesting thing, too, because they're just that team where every once in a while you think, yeah, they're done. They find a way to come back. Even that game against Atlanta.
Yeah.
I mean,
they were right
was
there.
A blowout, and then they had a chance at the very end to send it into overtime. But you just wonder, can they consistently rely on Russell to do everything?
And I think that's the problem. A couple of weeks ago, we saw a game where he couldn't, and it was hard to watch. It was hard to watch when he couldn't manufacture plays, himself and by himself. And when you look at this team, they're still the Seattle Seahawks, but they're not our Seattle Seahawks.
Right.
They're not the team we understood was going to bludgeon you, physically impose their will on you. They can't do that anymore. And when you're expecting Russell Wilson to make magic, not every game, every play, it's tough to rely on that down the stretch in the playoffs.
Who else are we buying into in the AFC? We talk about New England and we say, okay, their biggest competition is probably Pittsburgh if the defense can be more consistent, especially in the back end. Who after that? We just
the Jacksonville Jaguars quarterback by anybody but Blake Bortles.
I mean, that's the thing. We just destroyed basically the AFC West, right? So we mentioned Pittsburgh. So it's Tennessee and Jacksonville both sitting at 7-4. I mean, where are we going?
I watched both of those teams play. You can't believe in either of them right now, and so it does seem like a two-horse race right now. And if you watch the New England Patriots play, who by the way have the MVP. He's probably not going to win it, Tom Brady, because
probably Wentz,
because we're going to compare him to the other Tom Bradys that we've seen. But
this one still is pretty favorable comparison.
Exactly. But the guy quarterbacking right now for the New England Patriots is the MVP of the league. His team is playing at a high level. He is playing at a higher level than any quarterback, including Carson Wentz. But we just compare Tom Brady to Tom Brady.
Well, absolutely, and. People are like, well, let's give it to – no, Brady is playing phenomenal.
He's unbelievable.
He's going to throw for over 5,000 yards for only the second time in his career. The last time was 2007. So he's playing at a very high level. Mm-hmm. Ryan, hang on one second, because speaking of playing at a very high level, we had to get him on today.
Coach!
Avery Johnson, the Alabama head basketball coach, joins us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Avery, I got to say, what we saw over the weekend from your team was unbelievable. For those that didn't see it, there were mass ejections and an injury and a foul out. So the Alabama basketball team had to take on Minnesota for the final 10-plus minutes, 3-on-5. And you guys were down almost 20 points, and you came back at one point to make that a 3-point game before losing by 5. First of all, that's the greatest coaching job of the weekend. Let's be clear about that.
Absolutely.
Avery, what was going through your mind when you realized I've got to go 3-on-5 for 10-plus minutes?
Wow. Well, first of all, guys, good morning and congrats on the new show.
Thank you. Thanks.
Excited about you guys, and I'm glad to hear that Ryan's on today, and that's my homeboy. So
you already know, Coach.
Yeah, but it's amazing because in practice we work on these defensive disadvantage drills where we'll have 3 defenders, and they'll defend against 4 offensive players or 5 offensive players, and we talk about, hey, if we got 3 defenders on defense, you got to scramble and rotate out of your zone and sprint to contact and rebound and contest shots and get back and protect the paint, and we work on these drills every day. So that wasn't the abnormal part for us. But on offense, we talk about, hey, if we have 3 offensive players against 5 defensive players, hey, wait for your 2 trailers so that we can get organized. But when the guys were pushing the ball up the floor, there were no trailers, and they didn't have any of their teammates on the bench. So now I'm kind of contradicting myself, and I'm saying, hey, guys, split the traps, even if it's a disadvantage and you got a 25-foot three-pointer that you think you can make, take it. If you get trapped, move the ball, sprint out of the trap. So it's crazy of how I had to contradict myself of what I teach the kids in practice, especially on the offensive end.
Hey, Coach, I hear that. You hear this with all of the technical talk, all of the coach speak. But what was your message to them on the sideline when it's 3-on-5? Not like how do you want them to play the game? Were you telling them, hey, guys, we can win this, we can pull this off, we can come back? Or were you just trying to get out of there with a respectful showing? What were you telling your guys on the sideline to get them to continue competing the way that they were?
Well, when we started cutting the lead and, we got within, 5 points, and, we had a timeout, I would say, hey, guys, we might as well try to win this game. We're right there. This could be you guys can make history here. So we were drawing up plays, trying to figure out how we can, set some sort of flare screen to get Sexton or Riley Norris open. And fortunately we drew up a play and we ended up making a 3 on the left side of the floor that cut it to 3 points. And then we came back down and had another good look at a fadeaway, 2. But I was really proud of our guys. But to tell you the truth, guys, it's just a competitor in all of us. We were actually trying to win. We weren't trying to get a moral victory. But at the end of the day, I'm proud of our guys. But we learned a lot because obviously we can't have any of our players come on to the floor. So we'll look at it. But the kids, they were holding their heads up high because they gave maximum effort and in an unfortunate situation.
Well, we're talking to Avery Johnson, Alabama's head basketball coach on the Shell Pennzoil performance line. And again, they had to play 3-on-5 last 10 minutes of the game with Minnesota and got within 3 of that after being down a lot and ended up losing by 5. And again, it was part players coming off the bench being ejected, some foul outs, some injuries to where you had 3 players. I want to go back for a moment because you just said it too easily. When I'm drawing up plays, tell me when you ever in your life, outside of a 3-on-3 tournament, drew up a play and said, okay, guys, sit down. I'm going to draw this up. Because I don't know, do they all sit down? You have a moment on the court and go, what the hell am I going to draw up here? How do you draw up a 3-on-5 play?
Well, when you're an unemployed coach and you're working at ESPN and you're in the green room waiting to go on one of the shows, you have a lot of time on your hands. So those are the things you do. So I started doing that maybe when I was working in the media. But the main thing is you just try to, teach our kids that under any circumstances, life is not going to always be fair. If you have adversity, you still fight through it. You keep your composure, and that's what our staff and I tried to do in those situations was just keep our composure, encourage the kids, try to call timeouts where we can get them a quick break so that they can kind of refuel a little bit. But there was no surrender. no withdrawal. We wanted to try to win the game and compete to the very end, and we think we represented the university in a first-class manner outside of coming on the court by the way we finished the game.